Welcome again to Heart Power Conversations. My guest today is my dear friend, Natalia Kennedy of Butterfly and Lotus. She is a flower essence practitioner, a yoga nidra guide, and a lover of plants and nature. She has a beautiful gift for connecting you to your deepest self with love, compassion, and laughter. She bridges the wisdom of the plants and natural world and the deep conscious rest of yoga nidra and your deepest desires for yourself and your well-being. This connection creates an alchemy that supports your health and healing in a unique and powerful way. Natalia and I have been friends for, I'm not sure, for a while. And not only have we been friends, Natalia has also been my guide and my teacher in all things rest, in all things giving yourself permission to rest. You hear me talk about this often, that I am a doer, an energizer bunny, that I am a creative channel that never wants to stop. And Natalia has been my guide through flower essences and yoga nidra, and really incorporating that deep rest so that I can serve fully, so that I can show up as my most expansive self. And thank you, Natalia, for that, for being my guide and my teacher. And thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that it's been a journey that feels good.
Yeah, you've been incredibly supportive, and the tools that you pull out of your bag of tricks is they all go together beautifully, and they're truly magic. Like you are to me the essence of rest, of this, the goddess of rest. If I had to put
I
words
accept.
to
I
it.
accept. Yeah, no, it is magic. It is magic. And it's a magic that comes through and I think is unique for everybody. But the rest piece is certainly something most of us can relate to and on one level or another want more of.
So Natalia is a mother of two beautiful, beautiful girls, and she homeschools her girls. So as you can imagine, busy life, has a business that she runs. She is one of the probably most heart-powered people that I know, that I have in my life, who truly, what's the word? Walk the walk, not just talk, whatever that saying is. She is that. And she wasn't always this version. She has a previous career and a previous life, and has gone through her own journey that I would love if you could share with the listeners, because I find that hearing these journeys of transformation and coming out of that cocoon into this new iteration as a butterfly would, butterfly and lotus, it can really, it's so inspiring to hear that, and I don't think we get enough of that.
Oh, I'd be happy to share. Yeah. So I am a biologist and a paleontologist and an anatomist by training. I went to my undergrad and finished, realized that what I did was not what I wanted to do. And I redid all of my science classes and poured myself fully into science and the natural world. And that's the link there for me, is science gives me a way to understand the natural world on so many levels and in so many different ways. And I still daily use it and think about it. But so I was a PhD student locally, and I was in a bicycle accident. And I had to go from type A, kind of just going, burning the candle at both ends, more if it had more ends, doing everything to just a complete stop. And that was the beginning kind of my I don't know, awakening or learning that there's more to my life than I had seen so far. And so through that healing journey, which has now been over 20 years, I tried all sorts of different modalities. And, you know, we all look for the things that might serve us the best, and everybody's different. And so I moved into the realms of flower essences about 14 years ago when I was pregnant with my first daughter. And my birth doula was a flower essence practitioner, still is. She is now also my mentor and my teacher, and she's amazing. And so she introduced me to flower essences. Her name is Amaya Cohen, and I really was reminded and remembered in the work with her how much I am connected to plants and what healing medicine they can carry. And then as I moved through the healing journey, my nervous system was still very reactive. And I tried everything I could to kind of, let me meditate, let me do this, let me do that. And it's so unique for everybody that I found Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra was the first time where I felt like I did a practice and my nervous system would come down, but it would actually stay down. Before, when I did other things, it would jump right back up, half an hour later, a day later. Yoga Nidra kind of helped me move my own baseline down to a place that feels much more calm and comfortable on an everyday basis. So yes, I went from being a paleontologist, which all the kids love to hear. Oh, what? And I still love it. It's still amazing. And now I also do flower essence therapy and hands-on sessions. And I support people through Yoga Nidra and through healing their relationship with rest and with nature. And, for a long time, I wondered, like, how did I wind up in these two totally different places? But then I started to realize that they're actually not. They're both places of healing, just in different ways. And so, yes, I weave a very unique tapestry of science and plants and Yoga Nidra and all things supporting your healing.
So for someone who's not familiar with flower essences, can you give us a quick flower essence one-on-one?
Sure, absolutely. So flower essences are an energetic medicine, a vibrational medicine. So if we think about essential oils, right, they contain a part of the plant. You actually take the plant, you do
Extract.
all sorts of things with it. You extract things out of it. That's what you're touching when you touch an essential oil. That's why it has a scent. That's why some of them are okay for the skin. Most of them aren't because they're so potent, right?
Mhm.
Flower essences are different. When you collect a flower essence or you ingest a flower essence or even just put it on topically, you're connecting to the plant on an energetic level. So the way that I think about it is that the soul of the plant connects to your soul or energy or wisdom. And when you interact with that flower essence, you are connecting to the wisdom of that plant. So you might be familiar with, like, right, lavender is for rest. We all know that one, right? Like lavender helps us relax. And the same is true for the flower essence, but it does not contain any parts of the plant. So it is much less interactive with any other medications you might be taking.
Mm.
So that's sort of that's what a flower essence is. And then a flower essence most often is preserved in brandy. Some companies do it in different ways, and it's really neat to see the ways that they do it. Most often, and as it was done by Dr. Bach in the 1800s, they're preserved in brandy. And having brought up Dr. Bach, I just want to say also that he's kind of the person that brought back flower essences to our understanding in 1800s Germany. And you might be familiar with, you know, the checkout stand at the drugstore that has box rescue remedy. Those are flower essences.
Yeah.
It's just a formula of
I
flower
think Whole Foods
essences.
used to carry it. They might still carry it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've even seen it at like Walgreens and CVS, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. Yeah. So
Trying to make
that's
them
flower. Those
mainstream.
are flower essences in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because some practitioners do just one plant, single plant flower essence. Some combine several, right? There's also there's beyond flower essence, there's essence of all kinds of different of stones, of places. It's
Yes.
really,
Yes.
and it's like you said, it's that the energy and the soul and the wisdom that becomes that water holds, because it gets extracted, not extracted, it gets infused into water, and then it's
Yes. It gets,
combined
thank you. I missed that
and
piece.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
and so water takes on that intelligence and holds
Yes.
it, and then it gets diluted with brandy to preserve it so it doesn't,
Yes.
so it,
So it can stay stable,
yes, it
basically.
can stay
Yeah.
stable. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. And you're right. There are essences of so many different things. When I do my hands-on sessions, I use a lot of gem essences,
mhm.
which are also amazing. But if you can think about it as an energetic medicine, or even take out the word medicine, if you think about it as an energetic force, then you can start to see why a flower, a tree, a stone, a place might all have some sort of energetic imprint, right? If we take on the idea that everything has some sort of life force in it and wisdom in it, then it is something that exists everywhere, right? And the places, especially, I think, are really interesting because you can actually, you know, we've all had that experience when we walk in somewhere and our bodies either go, ugh, or they go, oh yeah, this feels good, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, places have energies and we feel them. We just don't always notice. We just notice slight shifts maybe in ourselves. So yes, there are essences of lots of different things, and you might use them as a practitioner in different ways. You might create a formula, as you said, and combine a number of different essences that support the person where they're at that moment. You might use a single essence because that's what is being called for at that moment. It just all depends. And you can also, as you know, because I know you do, use essences on your own and kind of try to see how you feel with them and see how they support you in where you are at that moment.
Well, I think as with anything, we are energy beings, and things, we're drawn to things if we allow ourselves to be guided to them. But with flower essences, because there is such a vast, it's like a library of knowledge that I mean, an encyclopedia of knowing the different plants and the different combinations. And you need to be versed in it. And that's why I would recommend anyone who is interested in, if they hear this and they're like, oh, I want to learn more, to come to you and have a session with you, because it unlocks, it's the beginning of your journey with flower essences. It's
Yes,
not like you
yes,
take one and done. A lot of the time you'll take it and you journey with it, and then there is another guide that appears, right? And you just keep going, and it's this beautiful,
absolutely.
once you engage with these planned guides, the flower guides, they, in some ways, you're like, you're addicted in receiving that support, because they are so gentle and so magical, and you almost don't know that what is happening. I recommend somebody to come and work with you
Yes,
so that you can receive that introduction. And it's almost like, it's not gatekeeping. It's almost like you welcome somebody into this world and introduce them in the most gentle way possible, because some plants are more forthcoming with their
yes,
energy, and some
absolutely,
are very gentle.
absolutely.
So to me, the gift that a flower essence practitioner can give someone is to be a wise guide, like a wise elder who is versed in this language, in the energies, and has had an experience of their own with these magical medicine.
Well, and also, you know, I think that it's important to remember that not only has the practitioner had their own experience, because they always do, but also they've witnessed clients and they've fine-tuned formulas and they've said, oh, well, how about this? And then they see what happens, and you can see where a plant can lead someone. And so it's the difference between, you know, going to someone who has years and years of experience with that versus reading the text on a bottle. Both might be okay, but I would highly invite you, if you want an experience that is guided, that is one that is really well supported, to come see me or another flower essence practitioner who can support you on that journey.
I would 100% agree and recommend that. So Natalia was my guide in all things rest, in changing my relationship and redefining my relationship with rest, the way I saw it, the way that I didn't make excuses for it, not having rest anymore. And I really wanted to bring this topic up because we see this over and over and over. We see burnout is still a very big thing in women, in mothers, in our society. And although we know how to avoid burnout, we still become victims. We fall victims to our own habits and the hamster wheel that we fail to recognize and to get ourselves out of. So I really wanted to get your perspective on how we can begin to change the relationship, how to return to ourselves when we lost our way in some ways, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It makes total sense. It makes total sense. Yeah, so many of us are yearning to come back to ourselves in one way or another. And as you said, our society, especially on mothers, but really on everyone, puts this huge burden of productivity. Go, 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 do, do, do. The more you do, the more successful you are seen as, and all of those things. And I think that it completely avoids a large part of what we actually need to be not only productive, but to be more connected to ourselves, which is a turning inward, which is a rest and a deep rest. We all have moments where we love to watch a movie or binge watch something, and that's a different type of rest and a very necessary one sometimes. The rest I'm talking about is a very intentional rest where you turn inward. And so, you know, rest, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll go back a little bit to my story again. I didn't know how to rest. I was, you know, a grad student that was going, doing research and doing all the things. And when I was forced to stop by this bicycle accident, I had no idea how to rest. And over time, I tried out different things that didn't really work. And then when I connected with Yoga Nidra, for me, that was my way of finding rest. And what the rest has allowed me to do more, and I've seen other people allow them to do more, is two different things. One, we can receive more fully from others. That's something that most of us weren't really taught how to do. Think about us when we receive a compliment, right? Oh, no, 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 no. That's, you know,
Oh, stop it.
instead,
Oh,
like,
stop it. No. Like, no,
yeah,
yeah.
stop. No, no, no. As opposed to, yes, thank you. Right? Yeah, thanks. That feels good. That's being able to receive from someone. We can do so much more in a more rested state. we just have more spaciousness. That
Mhm.
rest allows us more spaciousness. And it also allows us, and this is what most of us, I think, are wanting, because so many of us want to give to the world. We can give from a place of deep nourishment, deep replenishment, and this sense of contentment. And when we give from that place, whether it's dinner for your kids and the way you prepare it, or it is at your work and the way you do something or interact with someone or anywhere else in your life, people start to feel that. And that's where it touches into what you so beautifully talk about, which is the heart-powered living. When we are rested, when we have an intentional moment in our day, because our rest does not have to be for hours or even half an hour. We can start with really small rests. When we bring that to ourselves, because we are worthy of it, we deserve it, we deserve to carve out that moment, whatever that length of time is that's comfortable. We deserve that moment to ourselves, and we nourish ourselves, then we can, let me think of the right words, we can exist more in that state of heart-powered living all the time. When we're exhausted, when we're burned out, when we're drained, when we're running around trying to do 50 things, heart-powered living takes a lot of effort, at least for me. Whereas if I am rested and I've taken those little tidbits of moments to myself to also remind myself that I deserve that, right? Everybody else is getting those moments. I also, that I'm valuable. I deserve that moment to myself. And that moment to allow my body to rest deeply and fully. Then I come to heart-powered living with ease,
Yeah. It
you
takes
know?
course correcting. That's another piece of it. When we are not rested, for example, you didn't get enough sleep, you're grouchy, you're dysregulated, you're, all the things, and you have to course correct. You have to try to,
Oh, exactly.
reestablish your connection. You have to, breathe through it. But when you're coming from a place of rest, it's almost like I'm just flowing through it.
Yes.
I am able to hold more of my soul essence, more of my higher self, more of higher consciousness, because vibrationally I'm a match. And that's what I'm hearing right now. It's like rest
Yes.
changes your frequency to a frequency that is, it's like there's less density in you, right? Like it's almost like,
I think you definitely operate on a different
yeah,
level. Yes,
yeah,
yes. And of course, my science brain turns on and then says, well, yes, and let's nervous system, right? If our nervous system is dysregulated, you're right. What we're doing is continually like, oh, let me not react. Hold on a second,
yeah.
right? And we're continue. That's a lot of effort. It's a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can, again, and this is all, we all have busy lives. We all are doing lots of things. So this is not to say, we should all be laying down for 5 hours a day and then everything will be great. It doesn't work that way. But if we can take those moments to ourselves, then we also allow our nervous system a place to be and actually expand our capacity, right? Through our day-to-day living, we're expanding our capacities. We go do something different. That expands our capacities. We have an interaction with someone who's maybe challenging us that day. That expands our capacities. And I learned this from reading some of Corey Allen's work, is that as we expand our capacity in the everyday, when we rest, we actually get to fill that whole capacity.
Mm.
And that for me, it just clicked. It resonated with me so much. This idea that yes, during our everyday living, we expand, but then when we rest, it's like we get to fill in all the pieces and stretch into it, if that makes sense.
I love
Makes me
that.
think of like a cat, you know, when they're like, oh, let me just find every direction,
Yeah, makes
you
me
know?
really too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just one more thing about the nervous system stuff I want to add in is that some of us hold a lot of things in our bodies. And so sometimes rest, staying still, meditation can feel really hard. And that's normal. That's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with anyone who tries to sit down and meditate or rest and is can't quite do it. We just have things in our bodies that want to move through, you know? And I've been doing some work with somatic experiencing and really learning how to listen to my body talk. And a lot of times our bodies talk through movement. So sometimes you might find that before you do a rest practice, you might need to move some of those emotions and feelings through, you
Mhm.
know? Some of us do it through dance parties, some of us do it through stomping, all sorts of different ways to do it. But I think it's always important to note that when we talk about rest practices, those can be super uncomfortable at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's totally, totally normal. We can't go from, 100 miles an hour to zero with all of the things that have happened in our lives that our bodies still hold and have that be an easeful transition. It's a step-by-step transition that might take different types of support.
When you were talking earlier, I was seeing almost like a rubber band, the rubber band that gets stretched and it snaps, right? And when the rubber band is like stretched for too long, it's going to
Well,
weaken,
it
right?
gets
Yeah.
yeah, it gets stretched out, right? It gets to be that like
Literally was
floppy,
like
weird rubber
the
band.
visual I was receiving. I was like, oh my gosh, if I could only identify where I am on the scale of a rubber band stretchiness, I think, you know,
Well, it's true though. It's true because we do, right? We all do that stretching. But
yes.
if we stay stretched for a long time, right, in that kind of chronic stress, chronic go state, we either snap, which we see when people feel burned out,
Mhm.
or we get to that weird stretched out place. We get to that floppy rubber band space, which we don't want to be in either, right? We don't want to kind of be in that. We want to be able to go back and forth.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the end goal.
Yeah.
Nervous system wise, energetically, all of it. We want to be able to move and adapt through what we're going through because no one's going to have a life that's all easeful and not stressful. That just doesn't happen. So we have to be able to live with the lives that we're in
You're a
and be able to
resilient rubber band.
exactly.
That builds in rest. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of that rubber band example, I think rest is what helps you maintain that elasticity,
Yeah.
you know, that ability to move back and forth.
Well, and in the right conditions, because if you leave the rubber band to rest in a freezer or in a hot environment, like you have to set the
Yes,
right
yes,
the right kind of rest for you also in
yes,
where you are.
yes,
And I find that you are a wonderful guide in one providing the tools for it, but also in helping us find our what does rest mean for us, because I remember you asking me this and you challenged me find to create smaller rituals and smaller. I remember our one of our sessions where you said to me, you said, well, why can't you make lunch your rest? Why can't you make that time? What would that look like? What would you have to make that possible? And I have, and it really changed so much for me because I used to eat on the go or eat at my desk or whatever it is. And now lunch is my favorite meal of the day. It's the one that I
oh, that's wonderful
time
to
for,
hear. Yay.
yeah, and it's true. And I know for myself, when I can take that first, nourish my body, have a maybe a fancy drink of, I make infused water, whatever it is, treat myself. And I when I come back to work, or whatever I'm doing, I'm so much more connected to my body, to the higher consciousness. I am, I'm more satisfied with life. Like
Yeah,
that's another big piece of this is what is your contentment with life, right? Like as we talk about the hamster wheel and how we forget why we're why we're here, why we're living, why we're doing all of this, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's so beautiful to hear about your lunches. I'm so glad. I think we find when we can find those small moments and make something, I hesitate to use the word ritual because I feel like people are like, oh God, what does that mean? That's a lot of work. It doesn't have to be a lot of work. It can just mean instead of, slapping that turkey sandwich together for yourself or for someone else, you just take a moment to go a little bit more slowly.
Mind,
Instead of it being a
mind,
2-minute
yeah.
operation, it's a 5-minute operation. And maybe you even think about like, what do I want to put in this food? What would taste good to me? What would feel good to me? Because I know for myself, I get stuck in a rut. I'll eat the same thing day after day after day after day. And after a while, my body's like, excuse me, not anymore. Thank you. Whereas if we can connect to our bodies, like you're saying, just for that moment, that mindfulness moment, what would feel good to me today? Oh, I normally put spinach on. Yeah, no, I don't want spinach. I think I'd like, I don't, whatever,
Mhm.
arugula instead, right? But there's different little ways that we can bring in that mindfulness, but also that beauty. I know that you focus so much on the beauty aspect of whatever we do, right?
Yeah.
Because that's part of what feels so good. And it allows our contentment, looking for the things we don't have. We look for the beauty that we do have because it's always there. It just takes us towards it and smiling and saying hi.
Yeah.
Um,
Elevates our
and
experience, our living
yeah,
experience. Yeah.
yeah,
And isn't that
yeah,
what we all want? Like, isn't that,
yeah. We all want to feel pleasure.
yeah.
Yeah, and joy. And look, I say all this and I just want to, you know, make it clear that it's not always like that for anyone, including me. We all have moments where things feel like, oh, but then there's those moments that you can also be like, oh, but a lot of, I do flower essence work. So a lot of my time on a walk will be spent trying to find every flower or plant possible, right? But if you take that mindful moment and just look and like really look at a flower, the next time you're on a walk or the next time you're out somewhere in nature, find a flower and like take 3 minutes with it and like look at all the little pieces of the flower. It just reminds you how much beauty there is in the world and how we can connect to it and sort of incorporate it in our daily moments.
You speaking about flowers, I picked some plumerias from my
Ooh,
little altar here behind me today. And I always smell them when I pick them, but today I picked a bunch and I noticed the white milky substance all over my hands, the sticky stuff. And I was like, oh, I haven't noticed that before. I wonder why you created it, why you developed it. And I was like, oh, look at me today, being mindful and getting familiar
you're
with.
talking to the
I
flowers.
was, I was, and plumeris really is one of my favorites. In Dubai, we have them everywhere. They
I bet.
bloom,
Bet.
they bloom all year round, and they're really. I don't actually know if anybody makes a flower essence out of them, but and what they
They
would
do.
be.
They
They
do.
they would be what they would what their gift, their wisdom, their consciousness would be for. I think for me today, it's definitely served the purpose of like the wonder, they like, oh,
Yes.
nature. Oh, for a moment, that moment of awe, that moment of like, hmm.
Yeah.
And it snapped me out of whatever else I might have been thinking about, right? Like it brought
Yeah.
me into
Yeah.
and created space for something new to come in.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think when we have those moments with nature, You know, we're reminded about how amazing the earth is and how nourishing and beautiful, and I mean all the words, right? Because the earth is always both, the both and, but it just reconnects us back to that root
Yeah.
of, you know, putting our feet on the ground. As simple as that. Whatever ground looks like in your place,
Yeah.
just putting your feet on the ground and reminding yourself that we are part of this.
Other
And
tips you can give someone, putting feet on the ground. What else? What other tips can you
yeah,
give someone if they're like, oh,
um,
resonates so much and I really want to
right.
incorporate some of this? What are some of Natalia's best tips?
Well, definitely putting your feet on the ground, your bare feet, if you can, on the ground, and just walking, feeling it under your feet, and just really almost like moving your mind into your feet and imagining what seeing what your feet are feeling at that moment, imagining yourself rooted into the earth, whatever that might look like on your body, whether it's from your hips or your feet, but you've got these deep roots moving into the earth. That's another thing I love to do. I love to touch the bark of trees because it reminds me of just the complexity of everything, and yet how, again, putting your hands on the tree and being in your hands and seeing how it feels. Those are all little things I love to do. Doing a body scan, which basically means like starting at the top of your head and just moving through your entire body. You know, neck, how are you? Is there a tight spot? Is there a loose spot? And just moving all the way through, that can be something that can really you back in, because we're so outward so much of the time that giving ourselves that gift of turning back in can feel really good. It can also be a place where more feelings and emotions come up, and being able to witness those without having to fix, solve, do. We're always trying to do those things, fix, solve, do. What if you just let them be? What if you just, the other day I was feeling really sad, no idea why. It just came. And I was like, oh, okay, sadness is here today. Let's hang out. You can talk if you want. You don't have to talk if you want, but let's just be, and kind of really that acknowledgement, because so much of what we also do is not acknowledge feelings, but move through, keep going. If we can just be with them again for 3 minutes, then it allows us that space also to more fully inhabit ourselves. Right? And when we inhabit ourselves, we get access to all these other things, the pleasure, the joy, all the feelings. They're not all positives, all the feelings. But that's us. That's who we are. And isn't it marvelous in some ways that we get to feel all those things? As hard as some of them are, I don't think anybody signs up and says, hey, yeah, I'd love a day to feel really a whole lot of grief. But isn't it also amazing that because we love so much, we can feel that grief? That's where I try to stay. It's not always easy, but that's where I try to stay with it. But yeah, those are some practices. I went a little bit off topic, but those are some practices.
No, it's perfect. And also, speaking of all that, I think you are a wonderful space holder. You give beautiful medicine with the guiding people with the flower essences and the guidance of your yoga nidra practice that you guide people through. But the space holding, I find that, and I think you can already, dear listeners, you can already tell from hearing Natalia speak, it's nourishing and it makes you feel safe, and it's a gift that she has for when she is holding you so gently but strongly. It's like a strong container that you create around someone you're working with. I can speak from experience, and I think it comes through in when you're talking about it.
Thank you. Thank you. That feels really good to hear. I love holding space for community. It's something that brings me an intense amount of joy and pleasure. whether it's for a person or a group but just really having been someone who's traveled so much of that healing journey and being with other people as they are on their healing journey, because I don't think it ever stops. I haven't reached any pinnacle. I'm continuing to make mistakes and change and do things differently and notice patterns and all of this stuff. But to be able to be in relationship is so important. This isn't work we do by ourselves. We can't do all of this by ourselves, you know? And so I think to be in relationship and do that work is not only incredibly healing, but a huge, huge gift for the person also holding the space.
Yeah.
You know that because you hold amazing space.
Yeah.
It's such an honor, and a privilege to be able to be with someone in that vulnerable space. And yeah, I love it. I don't know. My kids just tell me I light up. That's a good sign, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely living your dharma, and it shows, and you can feel it as a client receiving your medicine and being held by you. So thank you for saying yes to this path, and for being a guide for others when they really need it. Where can people find you, and how can they work with you? And I'll put
Okay.
the website and all of that in the show notes, but if you could just speak to that.
Sure. So you can find me at butterflyandlotus.com or on Instagram at butterfly and lotus, all spelled out. And soon you'll hopefully be able to find me on Substack. And I offer all sorts of different things. I do virtual sessions for everything that I do. So I've had clients from all over the world, and it's really fun. And some people always wonder, like, well, does it really work virtually? It really does. I have been amazed at how incredibly well it works virtually. If you're in Southern California, I'm in Southern California, and we can find ways to get together in person. I offer flower essence therapy sessions, which are kind of conversations, where I then offer you a formula at the end. And you take that formula for a month, and we meet back up and we sort of continue that flower journey and that plant journey. I also offer hands-on flower essence sessions, which involve flowers and gems and all of these different essences. And again, we can do it virtually or in person. But in this one, you lay down on the table, and it's a lot less talking and a lot more work with the essences around your physical body, but also not only your physical body, but also touching into, all of the emotional fields and everything else. And I offer yoga nidra sessions, either private or group. And I also offer all of those sessions to corporations who are looking for ways to incorporate rest and connection to nature in their rhythms. And I do the yoga nidra again in person and virtually. So those are the ways that you can find me. And then sometimes you'll find me in different workshops I create or co-create that normally come out in my newsletter. And oftentimes in those workshops, I'll weave all of the different things together, and depending on who comes and what the intentions are. So there'll be flower essences and yoga nidra and maybe a flower essence journey with a plant, and all of those things will kind of work their way through. So yeah, that's how you can find me.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And yes, subscribing to the newsletter is one of the best ways to stay in touch and receive the latest and greatest. Natalia sends a beautiful newsletter. Thank you so much, dear friend. Thank you for this conversation. I feel like we could have 3, 4, 5, 6 hours more of talking about this, and we'll have to do it again. Thank you. Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you, dear listeners, for being here. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate, review, and subscribe, and sending you so much love.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Natalia.